Welcome. I'm Monica Twinar, Executive Director of the Center for Sustainable Global Enterprise at the S.C. Johnson College of Business at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. We're so glad you've joined us for this great hour of programming we've put together to talk about driving the just transition, the role of social sustainability in economic transformation. We have several great speakers lined up that I'm excited to hear from. But before we jump into our conversation, I thought I'd give a quick overview of our center. This year, the Center for Sustainable Global Enterprise is celebrating its 20th anniversary. For nearly 2 decades, the center has been conducting applied research and teaching on the growth opportunities companies pursue through competitive strategies that address the world's most pressing social and environmental challenges. We work with firms to identify innovative, entrepreneurial, and new business alternatives that they can implement to tackle the grand challenges of our time, such as climate change, ecosystem degradation, and poverty. We offer a number of programs, events, and activities for residential students and offer one of the leading MBA programs with an emphasis on business and sustainability. In addition to the eCornell keynotes that we host throughout the year, next month, on November 22nd, we will be hosting our annual energy conference, Cornell Energy Connection, which is an in-person event in New York City at the Cornell Tech campus and open to the public. We'll put the link for that in the chat so you can check it out. However, if you're interested in learning more about business and sustainability, we have an online sustainable business certificate program through eCornell that is available to the general public. We have also developed a self-paced online certificate program focused on sustainable tourism destination management. Both of these, again, are on the eCornell website. Now, let's turn to today's conversation. I want to take a moment to thank our partners, Diane Caldani with the CSG Group and Renee Bonamy, who is an alum of our program, with Bonamy Desenvolvimento Empresarial, for making today's conversation a reality. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Renee.
Thank you, Monica. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to host this keynote together with Monica Twinar from the Center of Sustainable Global Enterprise at Cornell Johnson and Diane Caldani from the CSG Group. During my time at Cornell pursuing my MBA and throughout my career, I've always been fascinated to work towards improving our society and communities, either by volunteering at nonprofits or by building projects with for-profit companies that develops social benefits. Today, we'll have a great discussion on how social sustainability ensures that economic transformation is fair and inclusive, and some examples of strategies for integrating social sustainability into business operations. I want to personally thank the center, our moderator Minja, and the panelists Bertrand, Yun, and Valentina, and the eCornell team who helped us enormously in putting this keynote together. Thank you all for attending the webinar, and I hope you enjoy it. Diane will continue with the introductions.
Welcome all from wherever you are based, and thank you for attending. Renee, thank you so much for being a loyal partner in bringing these topics to the forefront of the business and academic community, aligning us with Cornell Center for Sustainable Social Global Enterprise. And thank you to the eCornell production team for always making us look so great. Monica, we continue to be grateful for our alliance with you, offering discussions that feature experts in their respective fields who are advocating for a more sustainable mindset with purpose as enterprises pursue their economic endeavors. Sustainability is not a new theme or trend. Due to studies suggesting that our planet is experiencing major and speeding climate shifts, environmental sustainability has become a priority to address in many ecosystems. Our society is beginning to understand its importance and impact, not only on the environment, but on human capital, a major asset of any enterprise. Companies have been conscious of their carbon footprint and their dependence on fossil fuels, to name a few areas that are contributing to our climate crisis. To address the issue, they've begun to employ dedicated officers to take responsibility and implement policies to mitigate the effect within their own operations. Today's presentation will highlight and center on social sustainability, which delves into the well-being of people. It's an aspect of sustainability that has been overlooked, but that the esteemed International Well-Building Institute has committed to research and understand as a key driver affecting all divisions of a company as well as its bottom line. The CSG group is equally dedicated to assisting companies in exploring what they could do and how to implement some policies on their journey to being more sustainable. Many thanks to our distinguished speakers, Bertrand, Valentina, and Yun, for participating in today's conversation. And now, without further ado, I'm eager to introduce our illustrious moderator, Minja Yang, who will ask each panelist to introduce themselves as they reply to her first question.
Thanks very much, Deanne, Monica, and Cornell University. And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Driving the Just Transition, the Role of Social Sustainability in Economic Transformation. I'm Minja Yang, Vice President and Head of Sustainable Finance at the International Well-Building Institute. It's truly an honor to come back to the Cornell platform and moderate this session. Always makes me feel like coming back home whenever I attend and speak at Cornell events, especially today on the topic that's so close to my heart. In my career, I've worked at the intersection of finance, sustainability, and public policy, leading efforts to align global sustainability frameworks with real-world applications. Through my work with IWBI, I've had the privilege of collaborating with a number of visionary partners, developing tools and fostering cross-sector collaboration and conversations to ensure that sustainability goes beyond environmental targets to fully embrace the social dimension. Because at the end of the day, sustainability is about both the planet and our people living on it. When we talk about the just transition, it's easy to get lost in definitions, acronyms, and the familiar alphabetical soup of sustainability. But I think what matters here is that the social aspect, ensuring every stakeholder group in our society is represented and supported, is not overlooked. I'm grateful to see that this movement resonates with so many of our partners. And through the platforms like eCornell and Cornell Business School, we are also spreading the education that is so essential to drive meaningful systemic change that's needed in the market. I'm very excited to have the three incredible panelists joining us today. Valentina Villa, Counsel and Director of Social Responsibility and CREO, Yun Fu, Associate Director of Innovative Finance and the Milken Institute, Bertrand Badre, Managing Partner and Founder at Blue Like an Orange Sustainable Capital. So before we dive into our discussion, I'd like to first hear a brief introduction from each of our panelists, maybe starting with Valentina, then Yun, then Bertrand.
Hi, Minja. Very nice to see everybody here this morning, and thanks for joining us. I am a social worker since 20 years now. I started on M&A and on finance, and I have been a senior counsel and a director of social responsibility focused on the SDGs that the UN has encommended the world to be able to meet what we need in order to carry out our businesses in a sustainable manner without sacrificing resources of future generations. And this is very important. Every single decision we made on a day, on consumption basis, and also with respect to our businesses impacts how we live and also will impact how future generations will be living. Just recently, you have seen the increase of droughts and floods and hurricanes and not only the loss of lives, but also how this has impacted how we're doing our businesses. So I'm very thankful for the invitation and very honored to be joining this group today and see how we can impact and create a change.
Awesome. Thanks, Valentina. Yun?
Hi, everyone. My name is Yun, and I'm the Associate Director of Innovative Finance at the Milken Institute, a financial think tank based in Washington, D.C. So my work at the Institute is mainly focused on applied research projects to diverse new business models, capital structures, and policy recommendations to bring public, private, and philanthropic capital together to address global challenges through a financial lens. So our recent projects include financing preventive care in the US, in the UK, early warning systems globally, and financing affordable housing for middle-income population, as well as critical minerals for sustainable transition. So our approach at the Financial Innovations Lab is through the combination of our desktop research and roundtables and convenings with multi-stakeholders at roundtable. So I'm very honored to join the conversation today to meet people outside of our warehouse and to discuss how we can bring the social lens into the sustainable transition.
Awesome. Thanks, Yun. And last but not least, Bertrand?
I don't know whether I'm not least, but very happy to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me. I've spent most of my professional life exploring all areas of finance. I've been an investment banker in London, New York, and Paris. I was an advisor to the French President Jacques Chirac on development finance, focus in particular on financing health, water, and the relationship with Africa. I've been the group chief financial officer of two very large banks during the global financial crisis. So I've seen the system almost collapse, and I've seen what we've done or not done after this. I've been a managing director of the World Bank in Washington at the time of the Sustainable Development Goals, at the time of COP21. And I was one of the voices then that said it's great to agree on objectives, but I think we have not really seriously discussed how much it will cost, who will foot the bill, and whether our system was fit for purpose. And we are still there 10 years later. And after that, I wrote a book called Can Finance Save the World, which is a little provocative because with the exception of this crowd, I guess 99% of the world's population believes that finance cannot save anything. So I think we might discuss that later. And I've created with my partners Blue Like an Orange Sustainable Capital. And I usually say that today I have two jobs. My day job is to run with my partners Blue Like an Orange, which is an investment fund with social impact in emerging markets. So we are trying to show that even if the system today is not perfect, you still can do things. So you cannot choose a system as an excuse for not doing things. But the reality is that the system is neutral. So it doesn't reward you if you do good things. It doesn't punish you if you do bad things. That's your call. And so my night job, and today, even if it's not necessarily night in New York State, it's night in Paris where I am. My night job is to demonstrate that if we are capable of changing the system, that would be way better for all of us. And so we should not be satisfied with the system as it is, but we can do things. But again, let's work on the system itself. That's why I'm very happy to hear the good work of the Wellbeing Institute at Cornell.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. And as Bertrand mentioned, the system level thinking, whether it's flawed or it's making progress, it's not an excuse for us to not do things. And I think that very much aligned with my first question, looking at a system level. So during my work at IWBI, one question I've always been asked by investors, clients, stakeholders is social sustainability profitable? Are we only doing philanthropy by investing these money and capital into underserved communities, vulnerable populations, and to meet other social objectives, or they're actually profitable in nature? So I think that's an interesting start of a discussion, and maybe Bertrand, to build upon the point you mentioned in your self-introduction. Would you like to answer this first?
Sure. Usually in France, you say ladies first, but I'm happy to start. Thank you very much. I think there are different ways to answer your question. you can take a pretty aggressive stance and say, what is profit today? And I've been CFO many years, and I can tell you with the same business, you can have a different profit in 2024, in 2014, in 2004, in 1984, in 1924, etc. So profit is something which is not that fixed or cast in marble. The big issue today, and one of my investors told me that, he said, Bertrand, I'm ready to invest in Blue Like an Orange, get the financial return, and impact is bonus, is free. So the reality is that in today's system, social impact has no value. So that's one element. We don't value this. Does it mean that it's not profitable? No. And that's at the heart of our business model. Again, I don't say that philanthropy is bad, etc. You have to be very clear. There is philanthropy, there is investment, there are different ways to mobilize your money. But there is one thing which I'm sure of is that today you can, with no trade-off, invest in social business and make the market-based returns. So that's an excuse to say it's not possible. It's doable. It doesn't mean, again, that in certain situations, philanthropy is the key. In certain situations, you need the return of capital and not the return on capital. So the big issue is that people who don't like this tend to confuse things. And that's really what we should keep in mind. So again, I think it's a wrong debate, and it's a debate which is put this way by people which are opposed to things. And again, let me finish with that. I think it comes back to the point made by Milton Friedman in his famous New York Times article in September 1970, when he says social purpose of business is to increase its profit. He made the profit an end to an end. And that is wrong. Profit is a mean to an end. And the end is us on this planet, the well-being of people on this planet. It's not profit, which is an end.
That's a great perspective. And I think that perspective really remind all of us, our audience, of what's the ultimate imperative for organizations, for business, for investors. Are we asking the right question in the first place? If we are asking laser focus on profit, but maybe that's only a part of the process leading to the ultimate goal that a lot of us haven't thought through yet. I know Yun has a lot of experience working with vulnerable populations all around the world, hosting the different convening sessions. So from your experience working with Milken Institute, which is a great think tank on innovative finance, have you seen any change in this kind of debate or conversation? And have you seen any innovative financial models that can better incorporate the social elements?
Yes, for sure. So I guess in terms of there are definitely growing trends on focusing outcomes, like outcomes rather than outputs around the world. And also there are growing awareness of the business, seeing that, hey, there's not only donating for social causes, but also creating a better community, better environment for us to survive or to thrive. So in health sector, for example, we measure the economic values of many of the interventions by looking at how we can keep people healthy and actively contribute to the workforce and broader economy. And for example, in the UK alone, 6 million of working days are lost every year due to seasonal influenza. And that's just employees. And if a working parent's kid is sick, then he or she also need to take a sick leave to take care of their sick family member and therefore have to absent from the work. So I guess the case for the all business and is clear that if we need to invest in looking at the social sustainability as a whole and to make investments into that. And with that, there's also lots of different financing mechanisms like blended finance, social impact bonds, which encourages impact investors who are traditionally not in the area, but to invest in these social causes. And working with as a financial think tank, we work with a broad community of institutional investors like endowments, foundations, and who may not be traditionally involved in many of these social sectors, or many just doing it for good causes, not seeing the benefits of their own. But I would say that especially the COVID brings the momentum, like we see the market shaking, the capital market disruptive to the capital markets during the COVID period. So people are realizing how these kind of factors are really impacting their business and their investments.
Thanks, Yuan. And it's so great to hear that there are already a lot of innovative mechanisms in place that we can further explore to really keep this momentum going. And then Valentina, I believe from your experience working in Mexico and the Latin market, you've always definitely like being asked this kind of question. And what's your take from the Latin region perspective? As I know in your region, there's have been heavy emphasis on social topics like gender equality, financial inclusion, community empowerment. Are they influencing this kind of debate and conversations?
Yes, of course, Minja. And there was just recently sustainable taxonomy that was issued in Mexico. This is very important. This is a keystone because it follows what the Union in Europe has issued with respect to how to mobilize capital to sustainable projects. And following that structure allows for other companies that have businesses in Mexico and in Latin America to be able to follow this taxonomy. And the one difference and why it's unique in its type and so innovative is that it included a social component. And Well, for example, is one of the authorized companies that can measure this impact. And one of the things that, and I would just want to retake what Bertrand said, because it's very important. So far, we have been taught that social projects are not sustainable, but that's not true. When you see how we have been operating and how companies become bankrupt and how businesses just are not sustainable anymore, just like, for example, fast fashion, and have these dumpsters that tons and tons of clothes are being burned up because it's just being sent to countries that are underdeveloped, that is not sustainable. That is creating contamination, that is creating a labor force of minors, that is creating a huge pile of issues, not only on human rights, but that will impact the world somehow. And what the region has decided or has a benchmark is that 1%, which is nothing, 1% of the profits should be used for social projects. And this is key. If everybody would comply with this threshold, we would be having a much more evolved economy in the different countries. So my recommendation would be question your companies if you're complying with this 1%, which is minimal, but we have to start somewhere. So as long as 1% of the profits are being used for social aspects, we would be creating momentum. And the other thing that I have been very vocal about is to be able to tie up these social projects you work on to your business, because in the end, it becomes a circle of virtues. If you tie those projects that you are committing to and that you are supporting, this will have a benefit. It's very incredible how consultants that have been measuring this for decades, it is creating an impact. So in the end, whatever you destine to social impact, it will go back to you.
That's amazing. And I really like the diversity of all these answers, from Bertrand's investor perspective to Yuan's like engagement with local communities, and Valentina's perspective from regulators who's leading on the social aspect and enforcing business to do a better job. So my second question is might also leads to some debate or controversy, which is innovation versus equity. Because as we are talking about just transition, we have to take a look at also the environmental aspect, which is driving a lot of innovation around the world, clean energy, solar, electrical vehicles, which are essential to building a more sustainable future. However, when economies transition too quickly to these new technologies, the impact of the labor market can be severe. And we are talking about job losses. We're talking about layoffs and disrupted livelihoods of vulnerable populations, which are often the unintended consequences of those business innovation. And in a lot of developing countries where economies are heavily dependent on the traditional industries, such as fossil fuel extraction, manufacturing, agriculture, this shift can really create a large employment gap and also the economic displacement if the workforce is not adequately prepared and ready for the new industry. So my question under this context is, while innovation is critical for driving a just transition, how can organizations, companies ensure that their innovations don't widen social inequalities, especially in developing economies and vulnerable populations? And welcome anyone to jump in here. Maybe like talking about developing countries and marginalized communities, maybe Valentina or Yun, if one of you would like to chime in.
Yeah, if I may approach this question from focusing applying a gender lens to think about how we can ensure transition innovations didn't really widen social inequalities for different genders. So here's the reality, like women especially, they face barriers when it comes to access high quality jobs in green and blue economies. And a lot of this comes to down like persistent gender stereotypes and social norms, and especially in low-middle-income countries, which limits women's opportunities to work in these new like green energy industries. For example, I think in Sub-Saharan African women are very well presented, of course, in sectors like agriculture and tourism, but they're very underrepresented in higher paying sectors like renewable energy and sustainable transport. And also globally, I think women only makes up around 33%, only a third of like renewable energy workforce. And not to mention like only 5% of top executives like CEOs or presidents in these companies are females. So there's a huge gap for us to address here. And so one way that our institute looking at how to address this is to invest in training and education and doing some reskilling programs to promote women's participation in STEM fields can really help to close these gaps. And one example is that in Spain, they have a just transition strategy, which helps to marginalize the genders and communities to promote their employment and internship and entrepreneurship in the green economy. And this kind of like government policies, I would say, is really helpful to ensure that women are not left behind in the transition. And another area, so because I work closely with the health sector, so another area is the care economy, like jobs, whether in health, education, or long-term care. They are not only essential jobs, but also they're quite low carbon, and especially they produce way less greenhouse gas than a manufacturing job. So how we can promote more. However, I would say that many of the women working on these jobs, they are like many of them are not like highly skilled, and they are also underpaid or not paid at all. So if we can create more like paid quality jobs for health workers especially like train them for high-skilled technicians in our new green hospitals, then we can certainly address green inequalities, but also support a more sustainable economy for all. So by the end of the day, I would say that just from my perspective, addressing gender inequalities in the transition is not just about equity, but it's a like strategy for all to promote in the future.
Yeah,
And just to add, if I may, Mija, on what you just mentioned, one thing that is key is to make sure that we are carrying out transversal analysis and that our sustainable strategies are transversal to be able that we certainly do not leave anybody behind. And just something just to leave on the table for everybody, food for thought, is technology and artificial intelligence is being a tool that more and more we will be using in our day-to-day lives and in our businesses. And we just need to make sure that the information and the input in the algorithm of this IA does not leave everybody behind, and that those vulnerable populations are considered.
exactly. It requires all different stakeholders to collaborate together, right? Bertrand, do you have anything to add?
Two things. First, I think coming back to my initial point, innovation is a necessity, whatever we do. And that has been true 200 years ago, it's true today, and it will be true in 100 years. The question is, in which system does innovation flourish, and how is it measured? And as has been said by my colleagues, the reality of sustainability is that it develops over time. My strong conviction, it comes with a cost upfront and with benefits mid to long term. It's very different from making quick money out of an LBO. It's not the Wall Street, the movie 40 years ago. So it's difficult. I mean, it requires to stay the course and be focused. And it's very interesting that you address the question this way. With Blue Like an Orange, to be very practical, we put together, it's an open source. We put together an impact rating system. So basically, the money we put in a project, is it a AAA impact system or a project or a BB or whatever? And so we invest in different sectors, but at least whatever the sector, we look at four things. First, jobs, the number, but also the quality, the decent jobs, etc. Gender, and I agree with you, gender is central because it's important per se, but it's also revealing other problems if it's not properly handled. And it's not just about having one woman at the board. It's the way you handle women as suppliers, as clients, etc., etc. Third, of course, is taking into account of environment. And fourth is innovation. We put a premium to innovation because I think, again, the challenges we are facing today require us to stop with the biggest disease of the economy, which is more of the same. I mean, when there is a problem, we say, okay, we will put more money. But usually it doesn't work. And so we have to really change the way we look at things. And coming back to my initial remark, we have to change the way we look at our operating system. I think we cannot satisfy ourselves to be put in a little box where it's more sustainable, more social, whatever, accepting that the bigger box is not sustainable, not social, not whatever. I think the real fight is to change the heart of the system, the risk-return equation, to incorporate, a dose of impact and sustainability in this equation, to change finance, not to change a little bit of finance. It will take 20, 30 years. But if we don't stay this course, I think we're discussing in a vacuum.
I think Bertrand, again, raised something that's really thought-provocative, which is like changing the entire financial system, not only looking at one financial statement, one tool, or one investment decision. So Bertrand, let me stay with you for a little bit here. What do you think are some structural limitations if we're talking about the broader financial system nowadays? And what are, the kind of steps or innovations that you foresee in, as you said, in the next 20 years or even longer, that organizations and investors and different institutions should collaborate to advance?
Well, I think I will try to be not too long and to be a little maybe simplistic. I think today we evolved in the world I've described where profit is an end to an end. And that's really the backbone of the system. And it's pretty good, actually. It works very well with Excel. It works very well with algorithm. It's very easy to put in a box. And we all know how this is working. We all have benefited from that. So that's okay. So that's where we are today. And so how do we move from a system where profit is an end to an end to profit is a mean to an end? And this end is us on this planet. That's really the shift we have to do. It means that we have to discuss a lot of boring stuff, accounting standards, compensation policies, governance. All these things which, don't make the headline on TV. I've tried with the Minister of Finance, say, Bertrand, do you want me to go at 8 p.m. on the news to discuss accounting standards? No way. He was right. But this being said, it's extremely important. So if I have to draw a perspective over 20 or 30 years, I think what is being discussed today, in particular in Europe, but also globally, it's more challenging with the US, because the US usually don't accept international standards as a matter of fact, is a change of accounting rules. What do we measure? It's not just CO2, it's gender inequality, it's biodiversity, it's all these questions. So this is really what the ISSB, which is the new board created by the IFRS Foundation, is trying to do. This is what Europe is trying to do with this Green Deal and CSRD. I don't want to enter into the detail, but first step, what do we measure? Second step, once we agree on what we measure, are we willing to put a price tag on this, to value, to monetize what we have measured? And then that's the third step. Once we value all these things, these externalities, to speak like the economist, are we willing to incorporate this in the accounts, not to put this as a footnote in an annual report? Meaning it will have tax consequences. It will have consequences when you discuss with your banker. You tell me your company is worth $1 billion, but actually your company is worth zero because you're destroying the planet and you're treating your people poorly. So I can't lend you that money. So maybe I'm a dreamer, But that's really this is the way I see things happening. It's starting today. We should not fool ourselves. It's starting, but it's a long way.
Amazing. I love this direction of the global standardization and consolidation of standards. And I think like, although a lot of standards receive criticism, but at least we need to get started somewhere. And these standard setters are making their efforts. But talking about driving this systemic change, whether for the financial market or the broader society, it's so important to include also the regulatory push. Because in addition to standard setters, investors, regulators, and government, whether we are talking about regional, national, and international organizations, they play a very, very important role to ensure that investors knows where to allocate the capital into. Just as Valentina mentioned, Mexico launched the first ever sustainability taxonomy in March last year and includes both environmental and social sections. So whenever we talk about taxonomy, that term or that tool, whether we are looking at Mexico, whether we are looking at South Africa, China has its own version, Europe has one. So there are over 40, 50 different taxonomies in the entire world. The ultimate meaning and the goal for the taxonomy is to create a classification system so we can better allocate capital to more qualified environmental or social projects. So I want to ask Valentina my next question, which is from your experience working in the legal field with Creo, what are some practical ways business can embed social sustainability into their operations? And in particular, how can they align internal strategies with evolving investor and regulatory requirements?
First of all, Minja, I think that the most important is to walk the talk. And I'm being very blunt and honest and direct because there have been like many studies and many discussions made on this topic. But if the C-suite, if the board of directors are not aligned and they are not willing, then whatever efforts and whatever budget is used for this, it will just be left in a corner and gather dust. We need to walk the talk. We need to really have the C-suite and the board involved. It's very important the line of reporting that the chief sustainability officer or the sustainability teams have. Please make sure that the teams are reporting directly to the C-suite and to those taking decisions. That for me is number one. If we comply with that, everything else will fall into place because these sustainability teams know what they're doing. And what we need is to just listen to them, embed in our culture, in our DNA, how are we going to be able to operate? And a message that I always want to give and to share with everybody is that it goes back also to our individual decisions. The business will have a strategy, the business will have a policy, and will put it into place. It's very important not only to walk the talk, but to do it internally to the business, as well as with your clients, whoever your stakeholders are. But also when you start doing that, it has an impact in the decisions of the employees and the teams that are part of this culture. And those individual decisions that you take are very important, no? For example, if you work in a company that has to invest in projects that are sustainable, and you understand and you believe on why that needs to be done, also your personal decisions on investment will be aligned to that, and you will want to be investing in projects like that. As I mentioned in the beginning, even those decisions of consumption on a day-to-day basis that we make do have an impact. And just to finish off on this, I think what it's also very important is to be measuring and to be having the honesty on what is being done to be reviewed by a third party, to have audits, to have reports that are public and transparent and objective, and to measure your advances. At the beginning, you talked also about greenwashing. We can all be excited and we'll be very thrilled to be doing this, but it's a process, and it takes time, and it takes commitment. And measuring and looking back at where you started and where you are now, it's very important to see the impact that you're creating.
Exactly. And, at my in my team's work with IWBI, we always advocate that organizations need to get started somewhere, start measuring, no matter how challenging it is. Someone in the organization has to take that essential first step. And we've always found it's more effective if that type of policy intervention or process start from top down rather than bottom up, because we want the leadership team to be aligned. We want everyone to be clear, not just your legal team, not just your accountant, everyone to be aligned. Hey, the sustainability taxonomy from Mexico is coming. The ESRS was already launched. All those acronyms, they're not just letters. They're meaningful momentum that's pushing different stakeholder groups for a greater change. And talking about how to engage business, how to engage investors, regulators, I think it's also important to always include community into that mix, in like the supply chain and the broader stakeholders from our society. So the next question is for Yun. Yun, in your work on social sustainability with the Milken Institute, what are some key challenges in fostering the cross-sector collaboration or collaboration amongst different stakeholder groups to drive social sustainability? And how can these be overcome in the next maybe 10, 20 years?
Yeah, thanks for a great question, Minja. And really, as a think tank, we work across the public, philanthropic, and private sectors. So we do see lots of different challenges that we consistently face. And I would say that the biggest one we are looking at is like how we can build trust among these different groups across public, philanthropic, and private sectors. And you know that they often operate in silos, and sometimes there's always hesitation, always concerns around like, are we prioritizing public services? Are we monetizing people's data? So really establishing how we can establishing trust becomes very foundational for us to break down these barriers and challenges to move forward. And to do so, what we found really helpful, particularly based on our experience in the over last 20 years of running the Financial Innovations Lab, is all about getting everyone around the table early on and actively listen to each party's goals and concerns. And sometimes there are complaints and frustrations. And it's not always easy to align the diverse objectives. And frankly, reconciling these goals it's more than just open communication. It really requires some concrete mechanisms. And as we discussed earlier, there's lots of tools like innovative finance or blended finance can come in to they're designed to meet different needs of each sectors and bridge the gap by combining different capitals together. For example, maybe private investors are keen to invest in health, education, and other social sectors. They are often deterred by the high risks, maybe unproven business models, or maybe unstable revenue streams associated with the social enterprises or nonprofits. So when the public and philanthropic sector investment can come in as a junior debt or equity or even risk guarantees to de-risk these projects and thereby make it more appealing and attractive to traditional investors, and creating incentives aligned with the goals of all stakeholders. And also want to mention that I think we have talked about that throughout the discussion, but really to involve the local communities at the roundtable as well. When I say involved, it's not just about giving them a seat at our table. It's more about incorporating them in the upfront and thinking about their roles in the transition. And one example is there's UNDP's Solar for Health project, and where they work in countries like Zimbabwe, there are many of the remote health facilities lack reliable electricities. But initiative does not just install solar panels, say, hey, there's renewable energy, and they walk away. They do actively involved with the local communities, and they train local technicians, especially female technicians, to install and maintain these solar panels in the long term. So this approach is not just create clean energy projects, it also creates jobs, empowers communities, and improves the health outcomes for all. And it's kind of that kind of collaborations that makes a long-lasting difference. And I'm so glad that there are currently lots of successful stories and case studies we can look at and to foster cross-sector collaborations and building trust in the future.
Awesome. That's amazing. I really love your point of engaging different stakeholders, especially the community members early on in the process, no matter what kind of mechanism we are designing. Because oftentimes in the past, at least, these community members were given a survey when a decision has already been made, when a project has already been completed, and then being asked whether you're satisfied with that. But their initial suggestion and feedback was not even captured in the beginning of this process. So it's very, very important to have this process be comprehensive, be inclusive, and really drive the equitable development for business and for communities. So before we open up this session to questions from the audience, one final question for all panelists. What emergent trends should business leaders be aware to future-proof their organizations through social sustainability journey? And how can they better position themselves as leaders rather than followers in this place, giving all those regulatory and investor push?
For me, I want to echo what Valentina and to some extent Yoon have said. It's about being serious. It's not a PR exercise. It's not a nice kind of way to promote yourself, etc. It's not about playing with expectations. I think it's about being serious. What do? Do I walk the talk? Do I measure what I do? Do I report? Do I admit when I fail, etc.? Well, what we are discussing is difficult business. This is not business as usual. And so when people ask me what advice, I say it's always the same. Don't start with communication. Do something, and when you've done it, you say you've done it, not the other way around. Again, you will create disappointment. Too many people have said, "Oh, look at the great things I'm doing," etc. And people are not stupid. They realize that it's not true. And then they basically say they want to throw the baby with the water and say this system is rigged and etc. So I think we have to be both extremely modest and extremely ambitious. Ambitious because we need to change the system, and it's a 20, 30, 40 years perspective. And ambitious because this will take time. I mean, this has been said by Valentina and you. I mean, I'm French, and usually when I'm French, people say, "Oh, the French, they think that they take the Bastille and then it's done. You know, revolution overnight." No, it's not working this way. It's a long process. And I think our seminar today is one of the stones that will help us to go on that process.
Amazing. Valentina, are you in?
Yeah, so I would say that the trend, maybe I'm biased, but one of the trends that we are currently working on in the institute is to looking at how how the intersection of environmental sustainability directly impacts the public health, and especially with the currently increasing frequent extreme weather, like we see the floods in Florida that in the past 2 weeks, and now it is after the water has gone, there's still health concerns left there. I've seen the news early this morning. There's lots of people are infected with bacteria from the flood waters. And also we see there's lots of heat waves around the global south due to climate change and killing people's lives. So I would say that traditional business, usually like manufacturers, are realizing how their practice are evolving like with these sustainability climate issues. But now they need to like look one step forward and looking at how their actions and their interventions can have an impact on people's health and take more proactive actions. And also another trend is that when I was in New York last week and looking at how there are lots of empty offices spaces in New York cities, and while we are shifting like lots of business are shifting towards hybrid working models, and they do have opportunities to transform into like these unused spaces, like vacant offices, like into community assets. And for example, there are lots of community land trust in the United States to provide like health clinics, education centers, or shelters during extreme weather events. So these facilities can be a hubs for community resilience, but also becoming some like letting the business to recycle or to reuse the existing assets they already have. So these are like the trends I would say I really resonates with me. And with that, I will just pass along to Valentina.
Thank you, Yoon. And yes, I think one piece of advice that's very important is to be up to date. We have identified like 3 different buckets of clients that are working on sustainability. There's the big corporations that are already working on it, either because they had a liability or a fine because of what they have been doing and they learned it the bad way, or because they are truly committed just because of the size and they're working ahead because of the impact that climate change will have on the product line and on the distribution of their products or services or whatever. And there's another bucket that is not certain on what sustainability, and they're just, testing the waters. And as Bertrand said, they're just using this more as PR. And please take off that of your minds. It should not be PR. I completely agree with Bertrand. And then the third bucket are those companies are very small, that are super small, that are entrepreneurs, that are these just starting on their business and they're just tied up with surviving. And they have not even thought about sustainability, which what we have found is that it's most important that any startup has sustainability strategy, because for their survivability statistic, it will even help their odds to be able to have a sustainability strategy. What we have seen and the message we have been giving is please be ahead and please be up to date. Regulation is coming. Probably there will be green taxes because the costs of climate change effects will impact everybody. We have discussed here hurricanes, droughts, floods, any type of scenarios, and the projections is that it's just going to get worse year with year. It's a matter of fact. So if you are prepared, if you are up to speed, and if you're including these, it is the best strategy that you could use and have.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. I think one question from our audience is what are some really important resources that can get them started with learning about social sustainability? Because a lot of educational resources, even the industry events, conferences, highly focus on the environmental piece of sustainability or the E across ESG. So where can they get started? Consider our audience to be mostly business school students, MBAs, and alumni who are professionals working in different part of the world, in different industry. Where can they get started?
If I may, my piece of advice would be reach out to the university you're at, and Cornell has a fantastic offer of different certificates and different tools that you could use. I got a certification at Cornell online, which made it very easy, and it was amazing. And also take a deep dive into the site of UN Global Compact. It's full of resources, it's full of information, they're free, and you will certainly get a lot from the resources that they have. This is nothing new. This is happening, and it's have already been proven. So make sure that you are up to speed to these resources and information.
Awesome. And any suggestion from you and Bertrand?
Yeah,
No, I think it's
Sorry.
also important to check. I mean, I don't want to promote what I'm doing, but just explore what's existing. I mean, there are a number of as Antina said, in the different groups, the small ones, the big ones, the fund, etc., which are promoting different things. So you have plenty of resources available. So there is, I don't have a specific place to direct people to, but get smart and convince yourself that it's easy. It's not something special. Everybody can start. I mean, it's not something that you have to wait, like me, to wait to be a little older to get started. There are plenty of resources. You mentioned the one of Cornell, and most business schools today, most universities are moving in that direction. So don't be shy, or write to us. I'm sure all of us will be willing to answer your questions directly.
And also read Bertrand's books.
Yeah, I don't want to be commercial, but yes.
And maybe if I may, if these are business students, you have the power. You are the new generation, and I know it sounds like a cliche, but it's true. It's true. You're teaching us how to work. You're teaching us how to be better on absolutely everything that we do. Whatever decisions you take on a day-to-day basis, they impact everybody else. So you have the power, and use that power for the better good.
Yeah, don't be shy.
Yeah, it's hard to continue after all these sentences of wisdom, but I would say, like, I agree with Valentina to keep up with all the events, and there are many of them are broadcasted online, especially the events during UNGA. They're still available online, and in the next few, and currently in DC, there's World Bank annual meeting happening. You can see lots of trends, especially in development finance. And in the next 2 months, there will be COP in Baku, and I know that lots of events will be live streamed. So definitely keep up with the latest trend from these events. And like standing in the show, I was also, when I went to MBA, I know nothing about impact investing, social enterprise, all these, but I really learned a lot by communicating, networking with local professionals, and that's really helpful for me. And also, I would say that try to connect with your local impact investment societies or communities or clubs. You will be amazed how people are very kind and nice to to embrace you into their communities, and definitely will be very helpful, hopefully.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. And maybe allow myself to share some resources from IWBI. So we have the WELL ESG knowledge base, although like we cover much broader than ESG. A lot of the social sustainability resources, alignment tools between our standard and the European social sustainability reporting standards and others. Also, there's an upcoming inaugural IWBI's Social Sustainability Summit happening this year. So December 13th, please save the date. It's going to be at the Citibank headquarters in New York City. We will have an amazing lineup of speakers and myself, I will be moderating one of the sessions, not specifically on just transition, but also very relevant to today's discussion on sustainability regulations. So I encourage everyone to take a look and check out our website. So thank you, everyone, for the thoughtful contributions today. It's very clear to me that after our discussion, the importance to integrate social sustainability into business practice is so clear. And it's not just about meeting the regulatory requirement. It's not about just meeting the investor expectations. It's about making a meaningful impact on people's lives, which should be one of the ultimate business imperatives for all kinds of organizations around the world. So I encourage all attendees to reflect on the insights shared by our speakers today and consider how you can apply them in your organizations. And together, let's drive a just transition and build a future that's truly inclusive and sustainable for all. I'll also pass it to Deanne to say a few final words.
Thank you, Minja. This has been an amazing discussion with Valentina, Yun, and Bertrand. You have really shared some amazing perspectives from different angles, whether legal, on community-based, or on financial side. And I hope people listening will start to think about how they can participate to improve everybody's lives around the world. And we're also available for any suggestions on how to get started on a journey to be a sustainable enterprise. Minja, for sure, thank you for everything, for leading this discussion, and we hope you'll join us in the future for more such discussions. So thank you all for being with us today.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks to our audience, and thanks, Cornell.
Bye now.